Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today on Winsight Live. I'm John Springer. Phil, let's begin this week. dunnhumby, the data services company, uh, announced their annual retailer preference index. This is for the fourth year in a row. This is a pretty highly thought of survey of 10,000 US consumers, and it presents a picture, ranks retailers by consumer trust in various drivers of preference, or why they choose to shop there. The headline this year, the first time Amazon has taken the top spot in that list. They overtook both HEB, and HEB won last year, and Trader Joe's was number two. Those two are 2 and 3 this year, respectively. Interesting report from dunnhumby, which included for the first time what they were calling a COVID metric, which helped to explain the near-term changes and performance of various supermarket companies as they absorbed all this new sales that came in as a result of COVID and the changes and the shutdown of the restaurant industry and the overall chaos in the U.S. Interestingly enough, in the among COVID, its COVID metric, its winner is also Amazon, followed by Target, Fry's, BJ's Wholesale, Kroger, Food Lion, Fairway, Smith's, Publix, Lidl, Harris Teeter, Ralph's, Raley's, Brookshire's. What I'm trying to get out there, the conventional supermarkets are your COVID winners for the most part, beyond Amazon and Target. Target made a lot of great progress on its in-store fulfillment capabilities, and the collapse of so many general merchandise retailers that sent traffic to Target, virtual and otherwise. But the conventional supermarkets, the high-low players, those are the ones that did well during the, in their so-called COVID metric, and a little bit less well during the, when it's dunnhumby considered its overall customer preference winners. And, kind of related to this, Phil, another story that we were also worked on earlier this week, Barclays analyst Karen Short, who's been covering the industries forever, came out with a report that, kind of shed some not so optimistic light, I guess you could say, for those high-low traditional supermarket operators, despite all their momentum and despite all the gains they made during COVID times. Karen, in a note to clients, sort of assessed what she called the stickiness or the slipperiness of those trends. Her point, which is well taken, the conventional supermarket companies, although seeing these massive volume, are not really seeing an accompanying, at least in the same degree, an accompanying market gain, market share or household market share gains. And that, so she sees less upside for them, particularly as the year goes on. All that said, Albertsons reports results this morning, terrific numbers for them still, even better than some of the analysts, including Karen, had anticipated. 12.3% comps, Phil, driven by 225% increase in digital sales. That's still pretty good for a conventional supermarket. Hope you guys stayed with me on that. It's a lot to kind of take in, but I feel like between these three stories, we're getting kind of a real picture of where the supermarket industry is right now.
So, John, I would take issue with dunnhumby's preference report, and here's why. And maybe in the report, and I have not read it, but maybe in the report they're bringing in a third metric, which is how consumer behavior has changed during COVID. How we buy foods have changed. How we think about buying foods has changed. So we've got the fear factor. I don't want to go into a supermarket with a bunch of people with masks on or deal with the plexiglass. But also, I think that Amazon has risen to the top this year. I don't think that they will be next year unless COVID is still, with us, unfortunately. But I think what's so important is to understand how consumer behavior has changed. So we're not looking for a great shopping experience where I can go talk to Betty the baker anymore. I'm looking to order as quickly as I can, get it to me as quickly as I can, and give me a good price on it. And I think that's the only reason. When I look at a stellar retailer like HEB, who's phenomenal with everything that they do, to be beat out by Amazon, I'll fight that one to the tooth
I'll
and
just
nail.
say, I'll just say, that one of the great points in the Dunn-Humby report, and I urge you all to look at it in its, entirety, because there's only so much we can get into, a news article that got into that. But speed is one of the 7 preference drivers that they talked about. And, this is, based on 10,000 US consumer household interviews. That particular metric rose above things like price and quality, which are normally the heavy hitting things. But you're right. Look, they're all in the top 14 list, that top quartile of the 56 retailers that they did. These are all pretty much stellar players.
Yep.
Amazon, Trader Joe's, HEB,
Yep.
and so on.
HEB is still #1 on my list. Okay, Jen, let's talk about Amazon. What's Amazon doing that really shocked a lot of people?
Yeah, I just think, it's amazing how much can change in just a handful of years. And in 2014, when Amazon rolled out Amazon Pantry, which was supposed to be this, subscription service that would allow you to order heavy, bulky items, shelf-stable food and beverages and cleaning supplies, which tend to be heavy, so for a flat fee, either space-wise or weight-wise, you could get all of those things delivered to your home. And back then it was, if you look at the stories that were all the reporting that was going on, it's like, oh, Amazon's coming for grocery once again. They're gonna kill the grocery store. And now here it's, in 2020, they pulled the plug on the pantry service altogether. It went through a couple of iterations. It then became an add-on subscription fee to Amazon Prime. But ultimately, they've canceled the service. They refunded all their members, dues and the subscription fees in December, and said, hey, check out our growing number of Amazon Fresh stores, or your local Whole Foods, or look to other places to get these items. And it's just amazing to me that Amazon of all companies is saying, like, why don't you check out our brick and mortar spots here that are growing. And then on top of that, they continue to expand. We've reported that some industry experts are saying, Amazon is going to eventually have, some 2,000 stores, including Whole Foods locations. And they've just announced hiring for their first 2 stores in the Seattle area, which is kind of interesting, their hometown. They've got one in the Central District of Seattle, which PCC Markets opened a store there. It's kind of a becoming a gentrified area in the Central District of Seattle. They opened a store there in June. It's coming soon. We don't know. We don't have an exact date from Amazon Fresh when that'll open. And then a second Seattle area store in Bellevue, the Factoria neighborhood, which I'm not familiar with, but there's already Walmart and Target are in that neighborhood, so it looks like there'll be a lot of competition there. And then also they've just announced another location is opening soon in Whittier, California. So they're on the growth path.
Home of Richard Nixon, matter of fact. But I don't think he'll be shopping there. Yeah, that's where Nixon came from. So Jackson, undergraduate, I went to school in Philadelphia, and I lived in Wawa. I love Wawa. I love their fresh foods. I just even like saying Wawa. What's going on with one of my favorite C-store chains?
Well, and it seems like, you and everybody else who spent any time near a Wawa feel the exact same way. It seems like a huge example of the channel blurring that's going on between C-stores and restaurants is Wawa has opened its first drive-through-only location. The only services this place offers is drive-through and curbside pickup. And it's extremely difficult for convenience stores to just plug in a drive-through into a location. You'd think it would be very efficient, but you got to keep in mind that these stores are custom built to get people in the store and out of the store as quickly as you can. So adding on a drive-through to a store is like adding on an entirely new business.
Mhm.
And this is sort of what Wawa did with another location when they tacked a drive-through onto it in about mid-December. And then they followed up with this drive-through-only location. So I think you're going to see a lot more of this kind of thing from the C-store industry. Drive-throughs both attached to stores and as their own standalone. I know Racetrack has been making a lot of noise about adding drive-throughs to more stores also. And convenience stores have sort of flirted with drive-throughs in the past decade or so. You know, Cumberland Farms and Parker's, they had some locations with them, but COVID is just sort of a perfect storm and with the amount of e-commerce activity that C-stores have seen, it's a very logical next step to start adding drive-throughs and drive-through-only locations.
I love Wawa's management. I love their whole philosophy, and I think it's really smart to have just this takeout and drive-through without having a physical store to have to worry about. Because certainly from a labor standpoint, it's got to be a lot more efficient and just from a footprint standpoint.
Oh yeah, I mean, this place is about 1,800 square feet. I think they're employing about 30 employees in total at this location. They can service I think somewhere around 12 cars. They're open until 10 p.m. I mean, it's essentially like a restaurant, and it's just one very straightforward way to get the food. And I don't have to tell the restaurant industry how difficult it is to run a well-oiled drive-through. So I agree. I think it makes a ton of sense to just have this one location completely dedicated to drive-through services.
Yeah, and probably many more to come. Pat, as we're talking about restaurants, and I hate always to throw this burden on you, but more bad news?
Well, December's job report was kind of grim for restaurants. The industry lost 372,000 jobs, which
Wow.
is huge. But a lot of that was because indoor dining was closed in several locations, several states. So it might be temporary, but in the meantime, the restaurant industry is kind of suffering more than other industries as far as the jobs loss go, because total jobs lost in December were only 140,000. So it was really, because some segments actually gained jobs. And it's really affecting the independent and higher end chains the most, the ones that have sit down service. Because some of the fast casuals and quick service restaurants are actually adding employees. This Thursday, Chipotle is having a job fair because they need to add 15,000 new employees. So it's really affecting the higher end restaurants more.
That's good news with Chipotle. So what are these restaurateurs really thinking about? I just saw the announcement, I think yesterday, that Tom Colicchio, they've hired a new CEO for their, I think they've got 27 restaurants. What do you think in their boardrooms and in their minds is going on? What's this new iteration of restaurant going to be for them to survive, or are they just going to hang it up and leave the industry?
Well, I hope not. I don't want to just have chains to go to, but people really love their neighborhood restaurants and some of the fine dining independent restaurants, especially the ones run by chefs like Tom Colicchio. But I think they have to really figure out how to create an experience, because people do want to come back and sit in restaurants.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they're going to want more of an experience to make it worth it. And we see signs that takeout and delivery are really hot now, but I think it's really going to decrease in popularity as we get out of the pandemic. I mean, it isn't some people, it's part of people's lifestyle now, but it isn't something that is going to be as, prevalent as it is now, because people really want to get back into restaurants.
Yeah, and I had an interesting conversation yesterday with someone, and we were talking about frozen foods and we were talking about takeout. And I am supporting our local restaurants here in Southern California by doing takeout and so on. But I've got to tell you, it really annoys me that by the time I pick it up and I bring it home, it's still not hot. And I've got to heat it up. So I'm taking this food and I'm recooking it, if you would, and I'm not a chef. So half the time I do a bad job of recooking it, especially if it's a fish dish. And I agree with you. I think people are going to get tired of takeout. I think we're seeing already increases in frozen foods. And for me, I want my food hot. I just don't want to eat it cold.
Well, the packaging is improving, but it's taking a while to catch
None
up.
of the restaurants for me. They all have these black plastic clamshells that, and they poke the holes in them so it can breathe and get colder faster because they know it's for me. And I resent that. But Christine, you did a fabulous interview that I'm mesmerized about. And share what happened with your conversation with a DC supermarket operator.
Sure. Well, I had the great chance yesterday afternoon to speak with Danielle Vogel. She is the founder of Glenn's Garden Market, which is an independent grocery store in DC's DuPont Circle. It was really interesting and kind of wide-ranging conversation. She actually worked for 10 years on Capitol Hill as a policy advisor. Yeah, before launching Glenn's Garden Market in 2013. Yeah, her family history, she's the fourth generation actually to enter grocery, but she has this experience on Capitol Hill before then. And she said that in reflecting, on last Wednesday, she was watching on CNN. She wasn't supposed to be at the store that day, but she's watching things unfold, and it was really personal for her. She said she has great reverence for what goes on in that building, and to see everything happening really struck her. She raced down to the store once the Capitol was breached. And they formulated a plan quickly about what they were going to do with staff. It was a really interesting conversation to hear her talk about, not just what happened that day, but how things have kind of evolved in the past, year. DC's mayor, of course, set a curfew for 6 p.m. that day. And they were going to shut down the store at 5:45 to give people time to get home. But the 4 people on staff who were scheduled to work that night expressed concern about their safety being out after dark. And they made the decision to close at 4:30 so that her employees would have a chance to get home before the protests, the rioters, that crowd, that mob dispersed. We also had a chance to talk about, just storm after storm that her store has faced over the past year. And it was really interesting to hear her talk about this intense community that has developed, within her staff and within the small grocery, independent grocer community overall. She said last Wednesday, she got a call from the founder of Buy Right out in San Francisco, just checking in to see if she was okay. And she said that has continued over the past week. She acknowledged, at the highest, the biggest levels of the supermarket industry, it's, very competitive. She said, but at the independent store level, there's a great collaborative spirit. I really enjoyed the chance to talk with her, and she talked about things she's looking forward to the rest of this year, what gives her hope for 2021.
That's a fabulous story. And you're right. When we look at independents across the nation, they are very collaborative. They help each other. Everything from the CEOs in share groups down to their dietitians and their deli managers. So it's really a great community. And thank goodness she and her store and her employees were all safe. And having that policy background, and I've been in the Capitol a handful of times. But, when you walk in there, something gives you those chills. And it's really a very cool place. So what happened was heartbreaking. I was, watching TV and almost crying on that too.
There's been all kinds of blowback from this too. Also in the industry now, Christine wrote the other day about the founder, or not the founder, but the former CEO of Rouse's Markets, was in the, pictured in the rally along with another former executive of the company. That got onto Facebook. That led to all kinds of, protests against Rouse's. They said, go to another store, Bromart. That store, turns out that owner had said some things that were, in support of some of the things that came up in this. You had a rash of companies now denouncing political investments altogether, including Kroger. Since this has gone on, I mean, and this was just, I remember talking, we talked Tuesday last, and this happened on Wednesday, and just thinking, we were talking about COVID and what a wreck that was. And, who knew what else, laid ahead. It's crazy.
So Jen, everything's on your shoulders. Give us some good news to wrap up with.
Yeah, fortunately, there always is some bit of good news. We've been talking about, I've talked to a lot of independent retailers too, who've talked about what a bonding experience COVID has been with their staff, in these stores, who really support their workers. And just, I do think that this is a positive thing for the major supermarket chains, of how they have gotten behind mobilizing the COVID vaccine. My mom is, in the older population, and she's also immune compromised, and I really haven't seen her since March. And she was able to get a vaccine at Safeway a week or so ago. So that's promising, and she's got her second one booked. So, I'll be able to see her sometime after February. And, I've been seeing on the news, all the problems in Florida, in, elderly people, sleeping in their cars overnight in these long lines waiting to get vaccinated. And then they're turned away because there aren't any more vaccines. And then, on the flip side of that, then they showed some folks at Publix, and they were like, these guys know how to get it done. I just got my vaccine. Wegmans, 9 stores in New York. A lot of these folks are waiting for their next allocation. But Albertsons, Hy-Vee, HEB, they've all got like portals set up. They're just waiting to get these vaccines, and then they're going to get them into arms. And I think that this really goes back to, what the supermarket was years ago, as a community center, who, a place where they care about their neighbors' health. And it would just be, it's amazing to me, the role that supermarkets have to play in getting these vaccines out.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. Well, thank you all for joining us today, right here on Winsight Live. Don't forget, past episodes are on Winsight Grocery Business, on CSP, on Restaurant Business, and Supermarket Guru, and on all of our Facebook pages. And have a great week. Be safe, wear a mask, and we'll talk to you next Tuesday.